This video contains spoilers for the following Star Wars project: Star Wars The Clone Wars, Seasons 5 and 7. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for checking it out if you're new. Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated series introduced with a theatrical movie and then airing on Cartoon Network till 2013, has had a rocky history with endings, to say the least. I thought this would make it an interesting entry in Nando v. Movies' One Last Scene. Due to the acquisition of Lucasfilm by Disney, the show has actually had 3 different endings, albeit not exactly on the creative's own terms. You see, the show was cancelled in 2013 after its 5th season following the Lucasfilm sale. This was done in order to shift focus from the prequel era to the new future of Star Wars that would be the sequel trilogy and Star Wars Rebels. With all that said, there is one last scene in the Season 5 finale that serves as a melancholy but bittersweet end to the series at that time of uncertainty. For those of you unfamiliar with the format of the Clone Wars series, the show is predominantly told through story arcs, usually consisting of 4 episodes each. This helped with the series' huge roster of characters. Over the show's huge run, almost every main Star Wars character had a story arc in which they were the lead of. This large cast consists of those fans recognize from the movies like Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, as well as some new original characters such as Anakin's Padawan Ahsoka Tano, Clone Captain Rex, and Sith Assassin Asajj Ventress. While we knew the fates of those like Anakin and Obi-Wan, the show actually played around with the idea that anyone who wasn't in the movies wasn't always safe. In fact, the show's 5th season even used the slogan, "Who will fall?" throughout its marketing, promising that not everyone would make it out alive. This only raised the tensions as viewers went into the final arc of the season, The Wrong Jedi. During this arc, Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano and her Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker are called back to Coruscant to investigate a bombing at the Jedi Temple. Now, if you've seen the show, I shouldn't have to tell you that these two are not the most traditional Jedi. However, they are loyal to the Order. In fact, both of them are practically raised by the Order all their lives. The two are selected to conduct the investigation due to their loyalty to the Order and their absence during the bombing, seeming to prove they couldn't have been involved. Over the course of the investigation, Ahsoka and Anakin question if a Jedi truly could be behind the bombing, not wanting to believe someone would dare betray the Order. Eventually they find the bomber, revealed to be an activist against the Jedi Order's involvement in the Clone Wars. This brings some relief to the two, glad to see that there was no rogue Jedi, but the events have still left some questions in Ahsoka's head by the end of the episode.
I don't know how I would have felt if a Jedi was really behind this.
There are going to be Jedi who disappoint us, Ahsoka. But as long as we know there are good Jedi who fight for what's right, it makes it all worthwhile.
Following a funeral for the Jedi killed in the bombing, Ahsoka discusses with her friend, Barriss Offee, about the Jedi rule to ignore their emotions, during which Barriss asks Ahsoka if she feels this rule is right, to which Ahsoka attempts to justify it. The Order being all she knows, how can she dare question one of its biggest rules? Summoned to interrogate the bomber, it's revealed to Ahsoka that a Jedi hired them to bomb the temple. Ahsoka deflects this claim, asking for an explanation, to which the bomber explains Jedi are supposed to be peacekeepers, not soldiers in a war. However, before they can reveal the Jedi's identity, they're killed and Ahsoka is framed for the murder. Following her escape from arrest, Anakin catches up to Ahsoka and tries to talk her down. However, Ahsoka claims she doesn't know who to trust, to which Anakin assures her,
I would never let anyone hurt you, Ahsoka, never.
Wanting his help but knowing he can't, Ahsoka sets off on her own to find the real murderer. Following these events, the Jedi Council meets to discuss what just happened. Of course, those familiar with Ahsoka, like Obi-Wan and Plo Koon, jump to her defense, but the other members of the Council condemn her and believe she's guilty. Taking her investigation to Coruscant's lower levels, Ahsoka eventually confronts former Sith assassin, now bounty hunter, Asajj Ventress. Ventress taunts Ahsoka about turning her in dead or alive, to which Ahsoka responds with,
Despite what you hear, I'm still a Jedi.
And Ventress retorts that,
I'm afraid the other Jedi no longer see it that way.
Which actually gets to Ahsoka.
I hate to admit it, but you're right.
The order she was raised in has now turned their backs on her in her darkest hour. This brings them to an agreement to help one another, recognizing they're both disappointments in their respective careers. Eventually the two part ways, and Ahsoka is recaptured by the Jedi, during which even the man who raised her, Plo Koon, remarks that,
I think there's more going on than we know. By Ahsoka, or against her?
That remains to be seen.
one can imagine it must be pretty devastating to hear your father figure doubt your innocence at this point. All of this leads to the final episode, The Wrong Jedi. In the opening of this episode, the entire council, except for Obi-Wan, turns against Ahsoka and expels her from the Jedi Order. Ahsoka attempts to plead her case, but eventually gets angry when the council is no longer hearing what she's saying. Her Padawan beads are removed, and Ahsoka is absolutely crushed. Her demeanor for the rest of the episode is that of someone who has lost all hope, even confessing to Padme that,
Forgive me if I'm not optimistic. I thought I was part of that order, but everyone except Anakin has abandoned me.
During her trial, Tarkin even pushes for the death penalty. Remember, this season was heavily marketed under the question of who will fall. There were actually people who believed Ahsoka could die here. Thankfully, Anakin eventually finds the true rogue Jedi, revealed to be Ahsoka's good friend Barriss Offee, who once again reminds everyone that the Jedi are meant to be peacekeepers, not warriors. In this victory, Anakin tries to share a smile with his Padawan, but she can't seem to find it. All of this finally brings us to our one last scene. The Jedi Council make their apology to Ahsoka, noting her strength during these trying times. Mace Windu even tries to spin that this was all a trial from the Force for the young Padawan, to which you can see from Ahsoka's body language that she's not accepting that BS excuse of an apology. If Mace Windu has 0 haters, I'm dead. The Order offers Ahsoka her membership back, with Anakin specifically asking for her to come back to him. The music builds. Ahsoka hesitates, reaches for Anakin's hand, and closes it. She looks up, devastated, apologizes,
Master.
and leaves.
But I'm not coming back.
As much as it pains her to do this to Anakin, she has to put herself first and walks away. I still remember when I watched this for the first time and it turned my world upside down. Something that seemed so obvious to someone like Anakin and my 15-year-old self was instead flipped on its head. Anakin, of course, goes after her, and Obi-Wan attempts to follow, but is held back by Plo Koon. It's a small detail one might miss if they're too focused on Anakin. While all 3 of these characters are close with Ahsoka, this is a conversation that needs to be between master and apprentice. Anakin demands answers, to which Ahsoka replies,
The council didn't trust me, so how can I trust myself?
the Order she has devoted her life to and shaped her ideals around turned their back on her. That would make anyone question their own beliefs after such a traumatic event. It would be like going back to work with your coworkers after they've all accused you of murder, and on top of all this, your coworkers also instilled your religious beliefs and raised you. Anakin points out to her that this is a huge mistake, to which Ahsoka, again embracing her independence, responds with,
Maybe. But I have to sort this out on my own. Without the council. And without you.
At the end of the day, this is her decision. In one of my absolute favorite moments in all of Star Wars, Anakin tries to reach out to her one last time.
I understand. More than you realize, I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
Clearly referencing his secret marriage to Padme, to which Ahsoka hits him with the best possible response.
I know.
This moment is so important to their relationship on so many levels. While they're facing this huge heartbreak and separation, we also learn that Ahsoka knew about her master's defiance of the Order, but never surrendered that information to anyone, not even him. It really shows just how important these two characters are to one another, It also feels so great to hear Anakin voice his thoughts about leaving the Order, showing that he is not as blindly committed as he may seem at times. Anakin has a true and honest reason to leave the Order, but he also fears the unknown without it. And with that, there are no words left to be said. Ahsoka walks away from the temple, heading down the staircase, as the show fades to black and the credits begin to roll. There's no large orchestral flair in the theme song that usually plays over the credits. Instead, we get a sad variation on Ahsoka's theme from the series. It really helps to drive home the emotional impact of this ending. This is not a triumphant ending, and therefore it doesn't get the grand orchestral flair almost every episode ends with. And that, folks, at the time of the episode's release, was the end of Star Wars The Clone Wars. Is it the most satisfying ending of the series? No, but it's surely an emotional and impactful one to say the least. Fans had always expected to see what happened to Ahsoka, and why wasn't she in Revenge of the Sith, and now her ending had been left ambiguous. During this final scene, we see Ahsoka make a decision that some would argue ultimately saved her life, leaving her out of the events of Revenge of the Sith.
From a certain point of view.
This ending for the character would actually make a huge impact on the fanbase too, leaving many asking if Ahsoka lives for years after. For Anakin, this final scene just reinforces and gives fuel to his inevitable fall to the dark side. In this moment, the Jedi Order has failed both him and his apprentice. A viewer could go straight from this ending into Revenge of the Sith and see why Anakin would be so distrusting of the Council, and why he falls so easily into Palpatine's hands. This one last scene works really well as the impromptu final moments of the series that it became. We don't need to see more of the war after this. It's fun, and it gives some great stories, but it's not necessary to the overall picture. Here, in these final moments, we see the show saying goodbye to these two main characters who started it all back in the Clone Wars movie. It may not be a definitive end for the show or these characters, as we've seen them throughout more recent media. But it sure does make a great ending for the show at the time, and it makes for a great one last scene. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this impromptu ending of Star Wars The Clone Wars in the comments down below. I talk about Star Wars and superheroes a lot on this channel, so if you liked what you saw here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you know when that next one's coming. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.